Okay. I will call to order the second monthly meeting of the Village of Trumansburg Board of Trustees. Trustee Darfler is excused. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
No. Me.
Okay. Then item number 3 is our first public comment period. If there are any members of the public being admitted via Zoom, if there are any members of the public who would like to make any comments on any matter that they see on that they don't see on the agenda, now would be a good time. There is a second public comment later for anyone who sticks around who may want to comment on anything that is on the agenda. The public comment in person or online. Hearing none, then we'll move on to item number 4. We have a presentation from Dan Woodring of Skate Garden Inc. Ben, I don't know if you wanted to do any type of intro at all. I know you had a conversation with Dan more recently.
I don't have much in the way of intro other than that we had a conversation recently. I mean, I think it's hopefully well known. I assume it's well known that Dan's been around. You are Dan. I'm Dan. Yeah. I thought I recognized you, but we haven't actually met in person. But Dan has been around in the field in other municipalities, so hopefully there's at least some kind of general awareness of what the proposition is. But I think as far as intro, that's really all there is. We'll just
So we've set aside 15 minutes for you to give us a presentation. If you need more time, we'll find another time.
Mike.
If you don't use up all the time, then that's okay too. And then, yeah, if you would use the mic just so that everyone online can hear as well.
free to sit.
Yeah, you don't have to stand. You can take a
You
mic.
Just so the people online can hear.
Yeah, take the
That's
mic.
all right, I can project better.
All right. It's all yours.
Thank you. I'm Dan Woodring, founder of Skate Garden Incorporated. These are other supportive skaters here in Trumansburg. We're connecting communities with skateboard programs and nature connection programs and trying to get youth engagement in communities and Tompkins and Schuyler. So most recently we've had success with Enfield, and they've picked a spot for us to collaborate with their pollinator garden and create like basically a skatable arboretum. So it will be a winding sidewalk with skatable implements along the way, raised beds, bermed sidewalk, creating what you'd call like a quarter pipe rather than a traditional half pipe like you'd see on TV in contests, and benches. And so it'll all be made out of concrete and stone. And they're even supportive enough to write a grant for us with the Tompkins Parks and Rec. So we'll hear about that pretty soon. But it's very exciting. And we've had a lot of success working with grassroots. They let us do a fundraiser for Trumansburg skate program and have a free skate camp over there. So we build a skate park every year, and the kids have a blast, and it's a safe, fun place for them to hang out. And we've put a ramp over grassroots across the way property, and people come and use that freely. And development has just stalled because grassroots is still working on their plans with the township. So we've decided to look for other places that would be within municipality and under that municipality's recreation insurance, which is relatively inexpensive. Hey, Mary's also here to support me. Thank you. Mary is the founder of the Trumansburg Skate Project, for anybody that doesn't know, back in 2005.
Yeah.
Yes. So we're with those two requirements of being under municipality and its insurance, which is relatively cheap. I believe Enfield's quote was $300 a year for a skate park. We'd be eligible for grants through the Skate Park Foundation, which is typically about $10,000. And then we already have funding from the previous endeavors. So it's not unlikely that we could build within the calendar year if we found a space. So in the Google Doc, I don't have a way to bring it up for you guys, but in that Google Doc I sent, it explains the two spaces that came up at the Green Spaces meeting. One is, was on that meeting, and that's where the Giant is. And that would be a really great space, being that it's close to the farmers market space and central to, I guess you would say it would be kind of the median of the population in town. There's a lot of youth, like there's a lot of kids over there, and Obel or INHS Park, and it would be a great space as well, given that it's already a bowl shape. It could be multi-purposed as a town square, as well as having a stage for like public performances, like amphitheater style. The other space that I thought could be ideal is adjacent to, well, it's between the DPW property and Salo Drive. And it's a pretty large grass median behind that one lone house. And I understand there's, just looking at it, I can tell that it's sort of drainage sink right there. But that doesn't seem like too hard to put a culvert over to the creek from that area, and it could still serve that purpose while having a facility on top of it. So yeah, that's it.
Is it a fair recap that the ask, and not necessarily in the immediate sense, but like overall your goal is to secure land of some kind to use, and then some sort of umbrella type insurance coverage?
Yes. Yeah.
And did you follow up, Mary? I don't know, this was, I believe I mentioned this in the email, that all of our recreation programs have been transferred to the town. Have you thought through that at all, how that would go? Because for us, municipal insurance, as far as recreation, this type of thing, we just don't carry that. Or I don't know the details, honestly, but for us, it would certainly be more logical as it go through the town. Have you talked with the rest of the board about it?
No, no. So is that because it's a recreation thing, or?
Yeah,
You have to be
okay.
under that.
I mean, we just don't have any of that. To be honest with you, how to parse what insurance is what, I don't think not per day. But since we transferred our recreation department to the town, we don't carry insurance other than property insurance.
Well, I imagine you have some kind of general liability,
Yeah.
you know, for, someone would say, hurt over by water tower, farmers and everything.
We do, I mean, we have obviously probably more insurance than is. You know,
So do we.
like the list of insurances that we have, but I mean, as far as like adding single riders to an existing policy,
Yeah.
the recreation insurance is the logical choice, is probably the cheapest. I assume that's what Enfield did. That falls under their other recreation programs.
Well, I can check into that. That's the lesser of the two
Yeah, it's really.
asks here,
Sure.
I think.
I would like to say wherever that liability, I guess you'd call it, lands, I don't think it's out of reason that we'd be able to cover that expense as well. So.
Yeah, so it's more just the carrying and not the funding.
Yeah, so the space is really the issue.
Any other questions for Dan?
It's really when I'm clear about the question. It's.
Have you approached and presented to the town specifically? Town
No,
business?
no, we have not. I've gone and I've gone and
Privilege of the floor.
well, I took privilege of the floor, but I just
Went to the
I
town.
came to ask if anybody could help me. That was all.
And
Because I didn't quite know the steps to take.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had you and I had a conversation probably a year and a half ago.
Yep.
Did you ever get a chance or did you ever have any success in having a conversation with the fairgrounds folks?
Yeah, they were not interested. Yeah. That would be a great space for sure. But that I believe they are as a nonprofit, they're a private entity, so their insurance would be just as expensive as when we cover the skate camps at grassroots.
Is that part of the hang up with grassroots as well? It's just more expensive insurance to insure it.
No, for them, it's long-term planning. So they haven't decided what they're doing with that property yet, and they don't want to commit to
Okay.
anything until they have a full plan in place. Yeah.
And they don't want to do anything temporary or anything like that. It's just,
They allowed us to have the wood there. Yeah, but that's only gonna last so long.
Right.
Yeah. In fact, it's due for a pretty expensive resurfacing, so. Yeah. That's probably not an option.
on a personal note, that is available to use.
It is, yeah.
Okay, that's my child has all of the swimmers.
Oh, great.
You mentioned that you emailed a presentation.
I did. It was a Google Doc.
That actually means that before you joined.
Oh,
Did
okay.
did I?
I don't think I saw it.
If you didn't, I'm sorry because I've tried to harass everybody. With
Well,
my
no,
presentation.
that may be on.
That's okay. It might be out there in the,
I'll make sure to reshare it so we can see. Or when I say reshare, but maybe reshare it first.
Can you just explain like what was it in the doc? That way I have an idea of what.
Yeah, basically what I said.
Okay.
There's like a nice digital rendering of
Okay, that's what I was.
the Lititz, Pennsylvania skate park. They went like a DIY route, so the community got together and built it together with the funding I was talking about, and it came out great. Like it feels like, yeah, it just feels like a nice community park, but has skate implements in it. Yeah. Yeah, and the youth engagement of doing DIY projects, I think is really great. It gives them a sense of ownership and responsibility for the facility, as well as they get the hard skills of learning how to work with concrete, see how forms are built, and then really like advocating, having some giving them some agency to advocate for themselves and learn those soft skills of like what I'm doing right now when it comes to other things they want to do, whether it's have an event or apply for like an expansion to their skate park, you know, and things like that. You know, they have to come and get approval and talk with the engineer and work side by side with them to make sure it's all in code. So those are really great. And then I think, yeah, that's about it. Yeah.
what's the average cost of something like that?
For what?
For, say you have these two specific areas in mind,
Yeah.
like financially, what would be the cost of putting something like that in? Or what's it gonna cost for like the Enfield one, for example?
So when you come from the DIY aspect, it's more about what can you get out of what you have. So I come from a a tradition. Since 2005, I've been building DIY skate parks, and they started off what you would call a renegade skate park, and then 9 times out of 10, they're adopted by the town once the municipality realizes what's going on. Nowadays, it's a lot more diplomatic. Some people might argue not the best way, but I think it's great to ask permission and give the locals a chance to be a part of it rather than just like going ahead and stepping on people's toes. So the whole, what do they call it? Better to ask forgiveness than permission. I don't know if that really works nowadays. But to answer your question, I've watched grown adults spend all of their extra money building skate parks together, like building really amazing, beautiful things. And they're like totally within code, in fact, overbuilt most of the time. And I could give you,
So this goes, you build these, they go through the inspection process, you
Yeah.
have engineers that you work with or whoever that,
your closest example would be Honeyway Falls. They were given just a small concrete pad, and the local skateboarders grew up there. They outgrew their facility, which you'll see a lot, like in Watkins Glen. You can only go so far with something with ramps that are like 3 feet tall before you start feeling like, okay, we need something different. And these guys started their own concrete company called Capital Improvements, and 10% of their earnings went back into the skate park, plus all of the leftover materials from their jobs. And they ended up building like a world-class skate park, and they're sponsored by Sacree and in all these magazines now. It's really amazing. How much time do I have left? Or
3
am I-
minutes.
3
You got a
minutes?
couple minutes left.
Okay. I'm actually curious if any of you have any more questions or ideas if you feel like there would be a better suited space.
I mean, I'm sure you're running into it everywhere, but the space really is a challenge, right? Like it feels like. It's just the premium.
Mhm.
When you ran into this with the recreation more broadly on. Where do you put a center, where do you put a field? Where do you
Yeah.
put- And I think on some level, the appeal of the skate park is. Again,
Yeah.
but it still does become sort of an immediate population center. And dealt with that, right?
Mhm. I did talk to the 2 neighbors of the space down by the DPW, and they were all for it. They thought that was a great idea.
Any other questions? Yeah, I'm not in love with that DPW space. The Taganic Giant / Farmers Market pull-off space, interestingly enough, was fairly well supported back in 2005-6 timeframe during the first version of this attempt.
Mhm.
And the difference now is the farmers market was not then what it is now.
yeah.
Farmers market was
Teeny.
struggling and certainly didn't have the kind of overflow parking that you do now on Wednesdays there. So that would be an issue.
Mhm.
We'd have to really look closely at the design relative to the state road being there. From a liability standpoint, DOT is going to want to get involved.
Mhm.
And anytime DOT is involved, it gets interesting.
Sure.
I still think there's a possibility or possibility is the wrong word. I think with the right collaboration, I think the fairgrounds is still the best spot, basically based on its location and proximity to the school in particular.
Yeah.
But I understand that the fairgrounds board is who they are, so there would need to be some additional efforts made there.
Yeah.
May I ask why you don't like the DPW idea?
DPW ends up taking up a lot more space for with a lot more things from time to time. You'll often find a lot of stuff there.
Like the mulch that's there right now.
Mulch, gravel, equipment,
Well, big ones. Paving.
Yeah, we have
and the
to pay.
pavers are in town. They take up a ton of space there.
That's, I will say I have the same reservation, but not to mention drainage.
Yeah.
That's covered. To me, the drag is more to it.
I think, I mean, there's a lot of things attractive about the Teganic Giant space. Not only how it looks and how it can be designed, but you know, how it'll look with traffic passing through and seeing, you know, nice construction there.
Not a lot of houses in.
It's the state road.
State road
and
is the
DOT
problem.
That could be the issue, but we don't know until we find out.
And no overflow parking for farmer's market. That place that's packed during
What is it? Yeah, it's-
on Wednesdays. And if
Yeah.
something was significantly there, you wouldn't be able to
Well, I mean,
use that on off days, would you?
if money were no object, I could see.
We could do a
I
tunnel
could
under the
see it.
hillside.
I could see a design where the parking area actually gets paid. And everything gets set back
Mhm.
more up against the hill. But then we get into the conversation about adding impervious surface to the bill. I mean, that'll be an interesting one.
Yeah, as a mason, the deeper you get into a hill, obviously, like the more retaining you're gonna have to have
Mhm.
as well. So that,
Right.
like looking at the space the way it is just now, even with the giants still right there, you could actually make something pretty cool. And just use like the first, 6 feet of elevation against the hill as like the backing for the ramps or even like I was saying, like a concentric amphitheater facing out. But
Somehow that would have to be walled off. You wouldn't want kids like going up on the ramp and going out into the road.
well, the ramp itself is a barrier, in fact,
Yeah,
and it's not hard to put banisters on
Yeah.
the back of the ramp as well.
it'd be hard. It's hard to envision until you see it. Yeah.
But if it's set back a little bit. So
Mhm.
it's a parking space, right? If it's a boat end situation. Well, it's those options. Doesn't have to be some buffer, because that's where every part.
You mentioned one of the parks having like pollinator garden
Yeah.
element to it. Which one was that?
In Enfield, Mary Cornell is in charge of the pollinator garden. So we're gonna be working on a design next week based on our funding. So
And when are your plans for having that go in? What tentatively?
we should know by May as far as like what our funding will be.
And do you already have a design drawn up for that one?
I gave them a loose design, but I'm gonna work with Mary Cornell on making something that's more tied into the pollinator garden.
It might be interesting for us to see that design, just to give us some idea
Yeah.
of what the concept is.
Well, it's on the Google Doc. There's an image.
Okay,
Yep, that's pretty close.
okay.
Yeah. When is the appropriate time to ask for something else to be put on a future agenda?
Anytime between now and that next. Or I would say probably within,
So now it's fine.
I would say the week to 10 days prior to that meeting.
Oh, no, I meant like in this meeting, when's a good time to request for a future agenda item?
To come before this board again.
Yes.
You can request that.
Anytime,
Request it anytime.
Whenever you're ready.
Anyone. can request that
Okay.
anytime.
yeah.
So our application to have a fundraiser table at the farmer's market was denied due to oversaturation is what they said. So there's an unused space behind well, right in front of the DPW building where nobody drives, and it's where they have the recycling and such. And I'd really love to just, if I can, simply just put like cone off an area and have our table there, and then just bring boards and helmets and let the kids skate in that small area. I would love a chance to discuss that in the future.
I think something like, when does the fair, the farmer's market start up again?
May 1st.
Your first
Sweet. Will you send me an email and just remind me, and we can talk with Ben Dartler.
Okay.
And we can meet up maybe on May 1st and sort of look over what that would actually look like.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for your time.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Item number 5 is old business. A couple of things to check off here. We have a vacant position of deputy clerk and deputy treasurer. It is my pleasure to appoint Jessica Weber as our new deputy clerk and deputy treasurer. Her first day will be May the 13th. Don't stop in on day 1 and say hello to Jessica. She'll be getting caught up. But anytime thereafter, feel free to welcome her. Our window hours, the hours that the office is open to members of the public, will remain 10 to 3. Monday through Thursday, and 10 to 1 on Friday. So we will have 2 Jessicas in the front office.
Jessica OG and Jessica 2.0.
I also have 2 appointments to the ZBA. One is a reappointment. Jessica's done. One is a reappointment. Noah Demarest has sat on the ZBA for a full term. His term ended on April the 1st of this year, but he has thankfully accepted reappointment. So he will remain on the ZBA as well as on the CPZR. So thank you, Noah, for your expertise as well as your continued willingness to serve. And then we have had a vacancy on the ZBA for some time now. And I am pleased to appoint Tony Hansen to that seat. We all know Tony from our discussions over all things zoning. Tony proved to be a diligent researcher of material, and I know he had a lot of conversations back and forth with Ben Darfler about many of those things. And of course, he most recently ran for a village board seat in his most recent elections. Tony has accepted an appointment to the vacant seat. This will be for a 3-year term to fill out the remainder of, I'd have to go back and look and see whose term he's filling out, but thank you, Tony, for stepping into that role. So now the ZBA is fully constituted.
I'm sorry, Noah's appointment is 4 years or 5?
The next item of old business is we're going to have a conversation about our new garbage contract, specifically with respect to concern over unused tags. And so I will open the floor to board discussion about what if anything we may or may not want to do about it. I will say the last time this happened was, God only knows, 2011. And the decision at the time was if you had too many tags, you had too many tags. That is, I believe, the most correct decision from a legal standpoint. But if there's some accommodation we would like to try to make for folks who may have over purchased tags and only have 5 weeks or 6 weeks left to use them, then we can have that conversation.
So I had mentioned to Tony the possibility of honoring past tags. Was there any response or any? I know he didn't want to buy them back, or anything like that?
Yeah.
Is there any definitive thought from Red Line about how they felt about doing that or their willingness?
There wasn't anything definitive. My understanding is that the tags actually cover the specific cost of the dump fees at the dumping site.
Well, I will say, I don't mean to put that on Red Line, it feels unfair. Just, I don't think there's any expectation that they would do that, and float the idea, so I'm just curious.
That offer was not made.
Can you return, I mean, I
No,
know
I know.
Casella,
Yeah, no. And two, people have to keep in mind that Casella is a business as well. And it costs them money to distribute those tags, to print those tags, to provide those tags. So I don't think that that's something that once they print those and once you purchase them, that's something that they would be willing to absorb the cost of. Especially if you're gonna
we
lose
should
the.
ask, because I mean, you can return anything to the grocery store and they take it. And, you know, I mean,
Has there been any
return
discussion with
clothing to
Casella as to
Target.
whether they're,
I have not had that conversation. Jessica, if you wanted to send that email and ask. I imagine.
I can send
What's
you-
the nearest? I mean, Casella still is big enough in town, right?
Right, but they have different tag rates for in and out of village. So when you go to the Sure Save, you have to request in village tags versus outside the village. So there's a pricing structure differential.
so it's
I
not
know.
like you could tag your garbage and load it up and go throw it.
I know,
You can sell your.
That's right.
I know the tags in Dryden are completely different pricing structure, so it's different from municipality.
Depending on the contract, huh?
To municipality. I will say that of the ideas that I've heard floated, I don't believe, and I'd have to, I don't necessarily want to use up guys' time to ask this question, but I don't believe we can exchange tags. I think exchanging tags directly probably runs into a gifting issue because some people would be getting something of value. Some village residents would be getting something of value in the tags we give them, and other village residents wouldn't if they don't take advantage of that. One possibility, if we want to make, if the village decides, if this board decides it wants to make some type of accommodation, I think the simplest way would be for us to write into the contract with Red Line that we will pay for X dollars worth of dumping fees. And so people will be able to use their Casella tags for what, the month of June. We would want to get some kind of an estimate of what that would be. I mean, if there are 800 and some households, couple garbage bags a piece, plus the school, plus, we're probably getting into pick a number out of a hat, right? 2,500 tags a week at $1 a piece, plus or minus, so $2,500 a week for 4 weeks is $10,000. I mean, it's not nothing if we were going to cover that cost.
Right. So,
But if we start from a place of Red Line would honor the Casella's, we would pay a 10-cent difference, right, between them. Or, excuse me, our city. So if we were exchanging, it'd be a 10-cent markup, or we could have Red Line, so that would be one option. On the other hand, if Red Line just picks them up, we can buy the tags for that, right? We can build that in, 100 tags.
Right, but it's the same thing. So if it's $1.20 a tag,
Interesting rather than flat fee, right?
well, I'm not suggesting a flat fee, I'm suggesting actual dumping costs. So
Oh.
he would have that, and then Red Line would invoice us.
Yeah.
But I'm making up a number to try to get a sense of what that could end up being. If the village is saving $30-some thousand on the contract. And we spend that all in June. Making
right.
up for residents who bought, let's be honest here. People, and I'm one of them, who bought too many tags, right? And I'm sympathetic because I'll have tags left over. But should the village taxpayers as a group spend some or all of the cost savings of the new contract to effectively bail out
People that bought too many
Those of us
things.
who bought too many tags. That's the question.
I
Right.
mean, I will say, I start from the premise, yes. I think the answer is yes, I think it's reasonable to do that. Right, I don't think it was well that was set up fair decision. I feel that this was coming, I think there's. You know, we haven't already this in a decade.
And I,
So I don't think there's any reasonable expectation of any to be had that this is a change that was. Right, if we had published this and it was something that we did regularly every year. I would have a lot less sympathy. As it is, like, my premise is to sympathize with people who like just didn't want to buy those for the next year. I think there's a reasonable limit, but definitely my premise is to sympathize with that.
I think we should pick a number, give that money to Red Line and whatever that number ends up, maybe he honors Casella tags for 4 weeks or whatever. I don't think it's our obligation to make people completely whole, but at least if they get some sort of token of our understanding that, you know, we realize this, you know, situation.
Yeah, I think to me, the harder question is. What the administrative aspect, I don't want to flood from office with like exchanges. That part is a little.
Yeah,
But they just collect tags, I mean, is it not manageable to expect them to collect tags and put them in a satchel and count them out one by one at the front desk and get a check? I mean, that
They don't
feels-
collect tags. They just,
Well, they just scatter it from, right?
Yeah.
That's what I mean, like,
That's
that would be one way to do it, and we could have a direct. You know, tag costs that we would just reimburse. Or by the pound, right?
now where it gets even,
Sell.
yeah, where it gets even more complicated for them is people are gonna buy red line tags.
Right,
So the garbage truck is gonna be a mix of blue and red tags. So how will they know how many Casella tags are there unless they do some kind of a tally? I actually like that idea of, if we decide to do something, that we give a flat number, you know, the village will pay for up to $10,000 worth of you're collecting Casella tags. And we'll have to figure out a way for him to track that, because we want to know that he's not just saying,
and that's the trick, it's the. I don't know how to do it, I mean, this is sort of why I was curious to hear what Red Line said as far as. What their willingness was to honor it, so I know that they're sensitive to the perception and they want. They're definitely invested in that as well. I think that very much the best interests of the department, like they. At least as far as I've seen, that's definitely a top concern there, right? They want the transition to go smoothly in their business. So I think they would be willing to take on. Some responsibility.
responsibility but not cost.
right.
Right, sure, but I mean, as far as the administration of how we sort of share that. You know, but how we do the administration of that. Might take it on, but again, I want to be clear that I don't think it's their responsibility to do that. But they are invested in. Making it clear that they want to do this, so. I'd be curious to hear what their thoughts.
What are you thinking, Joanna?
I mean, my first thought was that we could trade sheets of tags. But I mean. The idea is the dumping. Cost of it, so that would kind of add to. I mean, I do feel like we have a responsibility to people. To cover at least part of their cost. I mean, I would never purchase more than 2 tags or 2 sheets at a time personally, but that's just me. So I understand that it's difficult for some people. And it's not all on, it shouldn't be all on that for that transition. I just don't know what the answer would be.
So what do you think if we offer him $10,000 to cover a dumping fee and if he would just honor
I have to figure out if there's a way for him to track.
for him to
Casella
track
tags.
that? Yeah.
I would be wary. And I don't think we should go from
Uh-huh.
need to.
Oh, I think a month. I don't know. I think 6 weeks is a long time.
Yeah, I would.
Think if you could make it a clean month, then
I don't.
yeah, I do too.
I'd be more interested in. With that exchange. I don't know, honestly, it's not. I'd be inclined.
Well, and we don't want to make a lot of extra work for Redline either, of having to do. I mean, these guys are getting off and throwing trash and they're like, now we gotta keep track of what we're throwing, so, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So maybe just a discussion with Tony to see if there's any way we can finagle it.
Yeah, I'll talk to him and see if there's any way for him to track. I don't know if there is a good way to, but. See if there's a way if you can track Casella tags and how we might.
Well, for 4 weeks. And. It's a heavy burden, it's very.
I will also. With much fear and trepidation, I will ask Guy about the gifting. The gifting issue to see if there's a simpler way to just trade sheets.
I think if we limited the sheets, if we did do something like that, if we set a limit of sheets, and they'd have to be whole sheets.
And they'd have to be whole sheets, yeah.
Okay. I mean, we don't need to go down this rabbit hole.
Right.
The sheets are different sizes, so whole sheets would be interesting. Right? Whole sheets.
Well, number of tags.
Oh, the number of times.
Yes.
Okay, everybody, we are doing our best to try and fix the garbage tag issue. But we will have to get back to you at a later date after we consult with all these other people. So to be determined on the garbage tags. Hear me loud and clear. Okay.
Did they say whether or not this, but did they say whether or not they were gonna write a letter or something to the?
They
And when they would
are
have that
preparing the
available.
letter. They want to get it out sooner rather than later, but some of it is waiting. This
On this
conversation.
piece, okay.
Yeah.
Red line.
Red line, they want to do a welcome packet for their new customers, but now we have to.
Can the welcome packet include?
That's actually interesting. Instead of trading tags or tracking pickups,
Yes. Good idea.
and it's not gifting because every village resident would have access to it.
Hmm,
That still feels like.
right, it does, but we'll see what he says. To be determined by the village lawyer.
But that's cheaper than $10,000.
Oh, absolutely. Trying not to spend people's money over and over again.
All right, next item of old business is a tree maintenance discussion.
Yes, so. The tree maintenance discussion. I should have planned this out in more detail, so please feel free to jump in, questions. Historically. The village as an entity. Has done nothing about tree maintenance. In a concerted fashion, and by historically, I mean decades ago, right? There's sort of been intermittent attempts. But in general, our approach to tree maintenance has been if it falls on the road, we clear it out of the road.
You talking about all tree maintenance or private property tree maintenance?
Private property throughout, so obviously village property and that kind of thing, we manage much more closely. In our sidewalk district rather, we manage those trees much more actively, but in general, throughout the village on your property or your property and Ruben's property, those trees we consider to be, and they are truly they are owned by the homeowner, right? So if your property borders a road and a tree, even though that tree may be within the right of way, that is personal property. And we have treated it as such, right? We have, if it falls into the road, we will clear the road, that's our responsibility, that is what our highways does, our EW super.
If it falls the other way and lands on your house, it's your problem.
Right, exactly. Or if it falls sideways and lands on your neighbor's house, that becomes a personal dispute or an insurance dispute or something to be worked out in a very neighborly friendly way. Depending on the neighbor, right? But bottom line, the village owns the trees that are on village property. So on that magnolia right outside that wonderful blooming magnolia we own, and we need the DPW approval, they're pruning it probably next week. We have not taken an active role in managing trees that are in the public right of way, near the public right of way, visible from the public right of way, or in backyards. We have not done any of that. The exception is that a few years ago, the street tree committee started doing an inventory of trees that were within the village right of way that were particularly frightening, were obviously frightening. This is a group of volunteers. I was at the time certified arborist and practicing arborist, but aside from me, there were no tree professionals on me. So we very much limited our scope to these are trees that are objectively terrifying. And what we did is we walked every street in the village for 4 years straight. They came up with a list of these are objectively terrifying, or not, I shouldn't say objective. Obviously frightening, right? To sort of the layman, these are frightening trees. I went back and double checked all of those trees as an arborist, as trained in this. Based on that determination, we sent out letters that were basically a financial incentive. So these trees look dangerous. We'd like to catalyze and encourage the removal and the mitigation of this. That approach was encouraging, right? The idea was to create a program that catalyzed the reduction of these risks, not to mandate it, not to require it, but to try and encourage it. So that's the most active that we've been. That program, to my mind, has worked wonderful. We've probably done in the realm of $30,000 to $40,000 worth of tree work with the village, and it's cost the village taxpayer about $2 million. So it's, in my mind, it's outstanding success. If you look at sort of municipal forestry programs, this is a thing that's possible in the tree farm and driving it, tried it, we did it. Except, this is a very big exception. Bradley Street for the last 3 weeks has just gone raining havoc every which way, right? Like, I shouldn't say 3 weeks, 3 months.
Bradley's or McClellan?
Bradley, McClellan, Washington. It's sort of that, yeah, not Bradley, but yeah, McClellan and Washington, that corner. On all sides, right? It has just been a mess.
Well, we went in front of the conservatory a few months ago as well.
Conservatory
No,
and Cuba.
no, we're all 3 of those.
Before.
No, we're all 3 or 4 of those trees, if you include Cuba, were they all on the list?
No, one of the 4 trees was on this. The others were outside of the village right away. They weren't. We were. So to address those trees briefly, those trees remain personal property. They remain the responsibility, the liability of the owners of those trees. We do not take, nor have we ever taken any liability for any of those trees. We do not do a comprehensive or inventory of the entire village by a professional. We have never done that. If we want to go that route, we're looking at $50,000 to $60,000 a year annually. It's a very sizable, if we want a real comprehensive inventory.
Of other people's trees.
It's of other people's trees. It is a big ask. Now, cities, for example, other bigger cities do this actively. They manage all trees within the right. And not only do they inventory them, they manage them actively. So like if you're in a city that you have a permit to prune the tree that's on your property. So that model exists. But because of all of this sort of havoc that has been wreaked on the island in particular, I've got a lot of feedback that we need to do something more. About a month before that, I came to this board and said, our tree committee is feeling like we're sort of out of critical trees that are in the right of way, and we're gonna move towards something that's a little more passive, right? We'll sort of open the invitation for people to apply for funding. Now, everyone within sort of that realm, everyone who lost power 3 times in the last 3 months, is feeling like we should be much more aggressive about our approach. So the question I bring to this board is there a preference? Is there a change in course that I should take with the tree committee, with our funding? Do we want to move in a different direction? Do we want to be more aggressive, more comprehensive in our approach, or do we stick with what we're doing now? Do I look for other options? It's certainly possible that there's other courses that we can take out of it. But I wanted to get a read of this group, see kind of where all of your efforts are. If this latest couple of trees falling down has been cause enough for concern that we should move.
I think it's interesting that you say that one of the 4 trees that have fallen was in the scope of the village, which would be difficult to say we do have agency over the other 3 trees.
To be clear, we can do anything. This is a case where it is a public health concern. For instance, in the 70s, there was a huge blight of all elm trees, so they were all dying. The village of Hugo Heights at the time outlawed elm trees. Right, so every elm tree in the entire village had to be cut down, regardless of whether it was right away, backyard, or whatever. Because they were recognized as to
Right.
so that is the purview. The way our tree law was written was specifically so that we would have that leverage if we wanted it. At the time, the ash borer, which is a beetle that affects ash trees, was just making its way into the village. So I was very confident of that as something we might want to pursue. It is in there. It would still be a very, very abrupt and substantial change, of course, to go that route, but it is possible. Just to be clear.
Yeah. I mean, my first thought, I know that one of my trees on my property is on that list.
Yours is the only one.
Really? So just so everybody knows this, and just because I wanted to bring it up. So that tree, I did get a letter for it. We talked about it, and I had another arborist look at it, and they said that the tree was okay for this year. Not for this year, but for the year that you gave me the note, which was last year.
Right.
So yes, we are getting it evaluated, just so you know, this year. But
So the way that the program is designed.
but I think that is the correct way to do it, is to still give the property owner responsibility for the tree in the way that they can. It is expensive either way, whether or not you have is it 500 or whatever it is?
So in general, this year would be the broad application for 500 would be the max, so it's
Right.
up to.
Right. And then, but then when you look at the trees that have actually caused electricity to go out for several hours, including my house 3 times. What, it's all hindsight. Yes, of course, people are gonna say that we should do something about it, but what if in the next couple of years, no other trees fall?
Well, I think. Yeah, so I think philosophically, my framing of this is, are trees in general a collective problem or a personal problem? That's fundamentally the question to answer. Then there's a question of where exactly is the line, is it at the right of way? People's backyards, is it everywhere? So that fundamentally is the question for this book. I will say that a nice kind of lens to view this from is that the silver maple that is sort of halfway between Washington and Bradley, maybe not quite halfway, that was the biggest piece out of the first, I think it was the first one that fell. That one is still standing, so it was one lead that fell.
Mhm.
Now that it's lost the lead, you can see that it is a horrible structure. The tree is very unstable, just by nature. The habit of that, the growth pattern of that tree is very unstable.
Mhm.
So that right now, the way that our tree program works, we could not compel that owner to take down this tree. Based on our current. So I think that's a good one to sort of think about, should, right, this is a tree that has a terrible growth pattern. It's already fallen, there's some evident rot. It's outside of our usual purview, do we want to pursue them? I will say that it is. Personally, I think it's a terrible. I can point out 3 other trees that look exactly the same throughout the village. If we go down this road, I don't think there's a way to do it halfway. My only suggestion that I think might be able to get us there is if, so stepping back for a second, if the back of your yard or the side of your yard borders a neighbor and it's a tree that you share, or a tree that's on your neighbor's property that's leaning over yours, and that tree falls, it's generally your insurance will consider that an act of God, right? It's your responsibility not to down the tree. That's just how that works. It's the same if the tree falls to the villager. The only exception is that if you've had a certified professional say this tree is a liability, it's obviously a liability, you have to remove your risk mitigated. That tree then becomes your neighbor's property. So we could approach something like the silver maple tree similarly. We could find a contracting arborist and be willing to do that. We could maybe pursue that, and I think that would be reasonable. To date, my approach has been if I'm going back to my old free self, these are not customers. If constituents come to us with these concerns, my response is generally this is a private property matter. I recommend that you find a certified arborist, a certified professional, and have them look at the tree, evaluate it, and then send certified mail a letter to your neighbor, let it know that this is liable. That's the way things exist. But there is nonetheless, I think, a public perception of this is a village issue that we should be dealing with, which is why here and raise the issue.
So the current tree law that we have only pertains to us requiring a homeowner to move a hazardous tree that might impede village right of ways or anything.
No, the village tree law gives us why
Very much broad.
Okay.
we can continue to remove.
Yeah, I've got it right here.
Any hazard tree.
So,
And
Oh, it
again,
is?
it's written with the idea of demo dashboard, things that might be broadly damaging.
Oh, okay.
But we have not implemented that as written because we haven't done the inventory, right? If we were-
Okay.
If we were to implement that law right now, as written, it would be akin to like pulling someone over when you're in speed limit and just saying it looked like you were. going-
Looked like you were going really fast. Right. Gotcha.
But. looks- That's kind of.
Gotcha.
Real strong way into that one that's written, other than we set the groundwork. For implementing something down the road if we want.
So as it stands right now, we do have an application. If somebody has a really poor tree, we have an application process that they can.
It actually hasn't gone yet, it'll go out this Friday, but I wanted to hold off until we had this.
Okay.
conversation To make sure that it's.
Mhm. I think there's just been a lot of concern simply because it's just been a really weird year. It's been so wet and so windy. I mean, on top of being wet, it's just been crazy windy. I still have half the siding off my house. Wait for somebody to fix because it's been nuts. Yeah, yeah, and exactly.
So I was under the, I guess, the mistaken impression that those two trees on opposite sides of Washington were in the village right away. You're saying that they weren't.
No, you're right, one of them was,
One of them was, but
one of them was, yes.
The most
you're right.
recent.
the most recent one, not the one that fell on the house.
Now you're making a second. The most recent one definitely, is the poplar that fell on wires.
Mhm.
That one wasn't, because for that one, a letter went out. We tried to encourage the property to take that one. Has been on my list for some time. I mean, that was a known and obviously dangerous tree. But
It was very obvious. It was like right on the wire.
But I will say, I mean, this is the limit of our capacity, because Joanna's tree, I thought was in exactly the same category, and I would have taken a 50-50 bet on it. Right, but you had an arborist come and say it was okay, right, so these things are.
Last year.
are subjective.
And that's the thing, like, it is subjective. And even the tree that fell on the house, it was uprooted. It wasn't like,
I'm
The
legitimately
tree.
embarrassed. I don't understand.
Right,
was-
yes, it came right out of the ground
Right.
versus being a rotting tree that,
Yes. That one did a lot of very strange.
So I don't think I would be supportive, just speaking for myself, I don't think I would be supportive of a process that wanders inside, I guess not outside, or outside, inside, outside the village right away. So because I'm envisioning a situation where we do some type of a broader inventory of trees on private property outside of the right of way. Then whose liability is it if we identify one that is too close to someone's neighbor's house? And then we notify the neighbor, but they don't do anything, then I guess the insurance company will say it's their responsibility because they were notified. But then the village is in the practice of taking some of those down, but not others. And then maybe another arborist says it's fine. I don't know that we want to. I don't know that I would support getting into those weeds. I could see a legitimate argument to be made for trees which are that a certified arborist deems as dangerous when it is in or partially in or even overgrowing the village right of way. Because then you have sidewalks, then you have parked cars, then you have electrical lines. Then you have, someone pushing the stroller under the tree in the windstorm. I mean, you can make up terrible, terrible scenarios, but at least in the right of way, there feels like a legitimate village concern at all times.
So I tend to agree.
Now, what that means in terms of action and enforcement, I haven't thought that very far ahead.
Well, so I think the question is, do we continue on the path of, or do we, because my committee is, right, these are volunteers, these are interested volunteers that I have trained myself. Even when I was a practicing arborist, my certification level in terms of technical credentials was basically the bottom available thing, right? So we are. I mean, lots of time, lots of effort. I don't mean to disparage this group because they've done, like I said, I think an exceptional thing. But in a court of law, if someone said this group told you had to do a thing and you didn't do it, I think the court would say, I think that's fair. So the question for me is, should we start coupling our actions with kind of backup by someone who's certified? Should we pay someone to come in and say this tree does or does not actually endanger the right of way? Because currently, as long as we're just incentivizing it trying to encourage people, right? We can take a much more hands-off,
Mhm.
like we're doing our best, but it is, I don't want to say casual, but it's not. There's no punitive aspect, there's no hard ask involved. The question is, should we go towards a hard ask? Should we have someone come and kind of do a backup?
Why don't we start with as simple as, you know the people, you know the players. Get some quotes. Get some quotes to have an arborist come and do their own inventory of,
It would have to be tree by tree.
I don't know, what does that look like? Is it 20,000 or is it 100,000? For the arborist to do an inventory of trees only in the village right of way. And offer that professional certified opinion as to,
We don't have anyone locally that has the capacity, so that's the 50 to 60,000 annually. At budget, so when we started the whole Arbor Day Tree City thing, the reason we did that was so that we could get points. And have that inventory done. You need a very, very large. That's sort of, right, I mean, you're talking. Geolocation, it's much bigger ask than like your typical tree removal company or even consultant arborist locally. But I can ask them, I actually, that would be interesting to do for an inventory.
I think without knowing what we're getting into financially. From that standpoint. We really can't make an educated decision as to how to proceed. It seems palatable to take something like that on, then maybe we do. If it's $100,000, we're just not going to. When as inconveniencing as it is to be without electricity, especially in the morning on a school day. NICEAG comes and cuts it up, and fire department volunteers do their part. It's almost similar, and there's the danger aspect, but it's not dissimilar to the repairing water mains versus replacing water mains conversation. Every water main break costs $1,800 in labor and parts. And it'll be 15 million to replace all of our water mains. So what's
Yeah, I mean, I do see the urgency, particularly on the bottleneck of two very large, very sort of exceptional trees that fell right into the road if you were walking.
Right.
Would not have survived that, right? So the acuteness and I think the sort of feeling of immediate danger. I absolutely.
But that gets back to the point you made, just a few minutes ago, which is if the village wanted to say our inventory made by primarily private non-tree professions says that these trees have to go. And the property owner says,
I'm not doing that. Yes.
Which they did.
go pound sand.
Yeah.
We have no recourse, really.
Right. Absolutely.
And so we're still back to needing some more professional weight behind that determination.
That's true. I mean, I do think there is an option where we do that professional weight on case by case basis. But we run into, I think, some legal concerns there. Because if you're starting from a place of non-professional inventory. I'll start with checking what a village-wide inventory would cost. And sort of what the industry standards are, because my world was only as an arborist, not as a village or a community forester, so I think I'm sure they're established best practices for how to approach this. I worry about a price tag, but I think that's a good place to start. Absolutely.
Do we currently limit homeowners on how or where or what they can plant on their properties?
Yes. Absolutely, that is another piece of the tree law, the plantings that are legal and allowable. So for instance, silver maples, the first one that fell, cannot be planted in the village right away because they are, as a species, very fast growing and brittle and growing great. And prone to that particular growth habit, so it looks like a broccoli stem, which leads to rot right in
Yes.
those structures. So, yeah, and that's just one of them, willows. There's a number, yeah, but in our tree law, that's what it falls, correct?
Any other thoughts?
Is there a way that we could post the tree law so people can see that?
Been on-
Is it on the website?
Website since
Okay,
2000.
Yes, but.
We also talked,
on time, I know.
but we could,
I just wondered.
we'll be adding a new item for the application. I mean,
Okay,
to the records.
I do think that it's important for people to be educated about it, because as like when you purchase a home. You definitely do not realize that your property extends to the middle of the road. Like, I didn't even know that up until like a month ago. So, and I've been living in my house for 11 years.
you never know till there's a problem, that's.
Right. So I think it's really hard to tell people what to do with trees that have been there before they even purchased them.
Well, that's definitely the needle that we were always trying, that is. You know, these are big, expensive. Repairs, and people generally don't look up, right? You don't notice trees except if you want shade or, you know, it's. It's not a habit of most of us are in to inspect the trees around us for risk. So when we were sending out these letters, it was unequivocal, right? And you experienced this, right? It's very surprising and it's very expensive. So it's a very expensive surprise, and you're trying to thread that needle, and hopefully we can continue to do it. But we'll see if we can add some more teeth to it and how much it costs.
Okay. Any other, anything else for old business? We have one item of new business that I'm aware of anyway, and that is. We are. Bless you. We are submitting a. Water Infrastructure Improvement Act grant application again. We've done it a couple of different times. This is mainly for water, the holding tank down on Route 89, as well as some water main improvements. Oddly enough, even though we are submitting the application, we need to have a resolution of support for our own grant application. And so that's what's before us. I won't read the whole thing. But it is a resolution of support and authorization to file the drinking water grant application in the 2024 New York State Water Infrastructure Improvement Act grant round. Couple of whereases. The resolved states that the village board identifies the village mayor as the authorized representative of the village to submit the application on behalf of the village and to execute all associated documents relative to and as required for the application, including the funding agreement and financial application. We resolve or acknowledge that the village may be obligated to provide local matching funds up to 40% of any project costs. You have the ability to edit this resolution. Jess. That last resolve should simply read, be it further resolved that the village of Trumansburg Board of Trustees fully supports the project and submission of the grant application by MRB Group on behalf of the village. So with that edit made, would someone like to move that resolution? So do I have a second?
Second,
Any questions or comments? edits. Lots and lots of money for water.
Yay.
Need a little bit more for the fire hall.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, then all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any other items of new business? Item number 7 is our second public comment period, our second privilege of the floor. See a blast from the past and the back.
Good to see you, Bob.
How have you been?
I don't know why I came back. Well, I did like Florida,
Yeah,
but my past legs. I came back, got a good deal, know that. I got a couple of questions, so.
sure, fire away.
Okay, first one. You made a comment at that public meeting at the firehouse. Future Trumansburg, where it stands right now.
Okay.
And the comment was that we were looking at purchasing property off of all those old land, potentially to put a fire station in. And then later in the program, you made a statement that we needed to increase density so that we could have more housing in the village of Trumansburg. So we accomplished the second point. The biggest place would be all those old vacant land, which I guess is owned by the housing authority.
Correct.
So if you put a fire station there, how much land are you proposing to purchase? And would that land be where you're thinking of putting higher density?
So I've never used the word purchase, not one time.
Well, maybe.
Well, it's very important distinction.
Yeah.
The village,
One of the phrase was, that's where you're looking to put fire
the
station.
village is not there's no intention, nor has there been any conversation with anyone about us purchasing land.
Well,
to locate
they're
the
gonna put a new fire station, so we're gonna have to purchase one.
That would be a false assumption.
You have sufficient land somewhere you can put a new fire station.
There are other arrangements that could potentially be made to locate a fire station on land that we have not purchased. That's all I can say. So-
Okay,
So there's two separate issues there. Yes, the village of Trumansburg needs a new fire station.
you got 3.5.
We got 3.5, we need more.
Just to buy land.
No, just
the
to
money's
build the
for-
station.
The money's for, all the monies that we've applied for or received is for the construction of the new station.
Oh, okay. You catch that.
Yep, so we've received 3.5 million. We have another grant application out to New York State for another 1.5. Will still leave us about 3 short, but there are other things in the works to potentially fill that. That's a non-negotiable. We need a new fire station, fire and EMS station. The scope of those two departments has grown significantly
Yeah.
during the time you've been in Florida.
I was in Arizona for one.
Yeah. As for housing density, that's not, I mean, that's a separate conversation. It's, I guess everything's related. Housing density means different things to different people. Some people hear housing density and they think of Manhattan. Other people think of Fall Creek. Other people think of Wig Street. So everything is relative. We are, ironically, when people open their assessments, they suddenly realize that the mayor knows a little bit about housing prices. We are headed for a $500,000 median home price in the village of Trumansburg. And we're headed there very quickly. I said 2030. I think I might have overshot that number. I think we might be there sooner. So we've had this conversation a number of times as a board. You know, we basically have 2 approaches to take. One is let housing prices go where they go, and the people who can afford it will be the people who end up living here, and good for them. The other approach is to say, housing prices will always go up over time. But if there's something that we can do to maybe make them go up a little bit more slowly than they have been in the last 5, 6, 7 years, then we can take that approach. And so that's where we've landed for now. As to that land specifically, you'd have to ask the folks down at INHS what their plans are. You know, we need, if we were to locate a fire station there, if we were to come to terms on how to do it on that piece of property, we would need 4 or 5 acres out of what's vacant up there, 39. So we wouldn't need very much.
The law takers, the lot from 96 back.
Yeah, I think it's 38 or 39 acres total.
Back in.
Right.
And also.
Mhm.
Some which is not used. I had somebody ask me if they could run back there, and I said, look, trailer park here, you scoot down that hill and we got single drive down there. I don't know too many guys around here that are running that. But it could have been,
Never know.
especially. But I just. Well, that's where I was thinking. If you're gonna create density, you gotta do it in open areas.
Mhm.
There's not that many left open areas in the village of Trumansburg to accomplish high density.
Well, the conversation at the CPZR and the conversation around the residential zoning when we adopted it was that, yes, that's true. However, there are, depending on how small you allow lot sizes to become, there are a lot of properties in the village that could add.
Yeah,
A dwelling.
it's split off.
They could either split off. How easy do we make it to allow for, you know, construction of the apartment over the garage? You know, those kinds of things are also part of the density conversation.
I've seen quite an increase. Add-ons to houses or garages added when I was zoning officer. I don't think I would allow.
Yeah.
Because I simply went to the builders and I said, explain this law to them. What are these 3 things in the law? What do they mean? As a builder. And I got educated really fast because I was told by the lawyer, just use your common sense. Spells it out, I didn't really understand that because I was a builder, so I just in front of the buildings. That's a good way to educate yourself. I guess one question I have, if you looked at the properties, all properties in the village, the trees. In your law, the existing law, can you tell people in a letter form, okay, your trees are in the right of way, are close enough to the right of way, they're okay in the right of way. And if that tree falls, if the village crew is required to come in to help clean up the mess, for example, in your lifetime, Hughes Street, that whole street was closed for 2 or 3 days because of trees down in the storm. That we are going to charge you so much per annum.
That is a question for our attorney. In general, in principle, you can say this. A given tree is a liability. You need to be aware of that, and it's now your job to fix it. There's a reasonable expectation, I think. Again, speaking in the most general possible terms, that people are not tree experts and they don't recognize danger in trees or weaknesses in trees, so they're not expected to. But if you make them aware,
Right.
then they become obligated to do it.
Nobody made me aware, and I took off 3 trees down.
Right.
Oh, one of them fell down.
What, so the other piece is that we don't have the technical capacity to make those judgments, right? So it would be unfair for us, or at least arguably unfair for us to say this tree is unsafe, but this one isn't, without a real expert to make that determination for us. that is the real, I think, hang up for us.
Yeah, but I think the specifically, to your- yes, specifically to your question, Bob, I think the answer is the current law does say, so if we hire the expertise from somewhere and that expert says this tree's a danger, then the law does allow for the village to remove the tree and charge the property owner. The answer to your question is an interesting one. What if we don't remove the tree and the property owner doesn't, but it falls and now the road is shut down for 2 days, we've got a lot of overtime? Could we charge that? It's not actually specifically spelled out in the law. That's an interesting,
Think,
that's an interesting, interesting twist.
Just thought I'd throw it in.
Yeah.
I didn't want to blur out, we used to blur out things that weren't. We were told.
that's back when a lot of people came, Bob, like all the seats were filled.
Well, I mean, I got in. Spot. I didn't know where everybody was from this out there.
There's 3 other meetings that right now.
Well,
Jason buildings.
that part of it's cheap right now. Used to was, well, what is done. I think one other thing I would say, like, my money just not there.
Well, it comes back to you, let me know.
It's been 10 years since I.
I know, it's good to see it. Any other public comments or questions? I think we have 1 person online. 2. All right, if there are no other public comments or questions, I would entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss a couple of personnel matters.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And good night, everybody.